This is a $30 lens, and this is what you can do with it. A little disclaimer before we get started. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is a $30 lens, and I'm talking about $30 brand new, so don't expect expressions like micro contrast or tack sharp to pop up in this video. This just isn't that kind of lens. What this lens is, however, is quite surprising given how much you're paying for it. Let me explain what I mean. Okay, first things first. This Fujian lens is a 35mm prime lens with a maximum aperture of f1.7 and a minimum aperture of f16. It comes in a really basic black design, which is surprisingly mostly made out of metal, and it feels quite substantial for its size. Of course, it's all manual, which means both manual aperture and manual focus, with no zoom ring being a prime. It's natively a C-mount lens, which is typical of CCTV lenses like this one, but it conveniently comes with a micro four thirds adapter and a couple of little extension rings for macros. Admittedly, that f1.7 aperture was what got me interested in the first place. Since the 14-42 kit lens on my G7 is surely not the fastest out there, I wanted to try something a bit faster before investing in some more serious glass. However, once I put the thing on my camera, I immediately realized that it could be much more than just a toy. In fact, I started using it in my own videos quite a bit, and the results were surprising to say the least. At f1.7 it lets in a lot of light, and it creates a super shallow depth of field, two things I really love for the kind of videos I do. Besides, it offers a 12 blades aperture, which is quite amazing for a lens this cheap, and it wonderfully blurs away your background. As a bonus, like many vintage lenses, it creates what's known as a swirly bokeh, which means that your out of focus areas will create a slight ellipse rather than a perfect circle. It's probably something you wouldn't want on a job, but it surely makes for a really interesting look, or even artistic if you want. Something that's also extremely interesting in this lens is its tendency to flare. Again, it's not something desirable most of the times, but if you can control your light sources, it will help to create some really stunning images. What I've said so far applies to both stills and videos. There's another bit that makes me love it when it comes to videos, and it's those manual goodies. The clickless aperture and focus are perfect for video, and they are extremely smooth, which helps in creating seamless transitions or making quick adjustments on the fly. The focal length is also one I'm quite a fan of. 35mm translates to 70mm on a micro four thirds sensor, being right in between a versatile focal length like 50mm and a more telephoto one like 100mm. I've used it a lot for portraits, but it also makes for some terrific close-ups of small objects, which is what I mainly shoot anyway. Okay, I've sung its praises for a bit, but it's also fair to mention what you can do with this lens. First of all, forget about landscapes. For who knows what optical reason, sharpness at the corners of the image just falls apart if you try to shoot at a distance. It does get better if you close it down to f16, but in that case chromatic aberration becomes really visible. So unless this kind of tilt-shift look is what you're going for, just forget about landscapes. The other situation you'll hardly ever consider using it is in really bright lighting conditions. Because it flares so easily, contrast is basically destroyed when exposed to direct sunlight. It is mostly fixable in post, but I honestly avoid this kind of scenarios altogether. However, if you're outside and you really want to take that shot with this lens, a nice trick I've found is to block the light source just above the lens, and for this even your hand will do. So long story short, here's who I think this lens is for and who should look for something else instead. It's not the lens you want if you really need sharp images, of course, especially for stills, and it's definitely not a lens to consider for a landscape photographer. On the other hand, it is ideal for anyone on a budget looking forward to trying something new and interesting before investing in something more expensive. It's great if you want to get into manual lenses, but you're unsure whether those are for you or not, and it's perfect if you're a fan of that vintage look you're gonna use Instagram filters for anyway. Overall, it's a surprisingly good lens for that ridiculous price, and if you use it like you should, that is as a creative instrument rather than a precision tool, I can guarantee you that it will be just plain fun using it. So that was it for this kind of an unusual review. Definitely let me know in the comment section if you guys want to see more photography related videos in the future. And as always, thank you so much for watching. This was Joe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.